Once again, I'm Lucia Sachwayo and welcome to SAICE TV. We're here at the SAICE House in Midrand to attend the open discussion on what led to the 15 VAs to take legal action against the Department of Public Works as well as the Engineering Council of South Africa. According to the VAs, the changes made to the current 50 council were not legally consulted. SAICE CEO Midrand gives us an idea of the current state of relations between ECSA and the VAs and the steps that were taken to ensure that the matter was resolved before it became an ongoing lawsuit.
Audio Jungle.
Is a fanatic. All right, so what we're going to do this evening is we're going to test some assumptions, we're going to test some information, and we're going to do it within the interests of not being fanatics, of seeing both sides of the story. Unfortunately, the invitation for ECSA to be represented here this evening was not honoured, and as a result of that, this particular session also is not unfortunately going to earn you any CPD points because ECSA ruled that no CPD points could be awarded. And then I also need to warn you, okay, depending on how you're planning on behaving, we are going to be recording a session for SAICE TV, and SAICE TV is broadcast on YouTube, so if you choose to make a particularly vociferous point, it could be that you feature quite strongly in social media. I hope I'm not talking anyone out of doing it. I think it's a topic that's important. I think it's a topic that's close to the hearts of many of us, so we look forward to the discussion. So what I'm going to do is that I've found that when introducing a panel, is when someone else introduces someone, they're always tempted to say a lot. But when you ask people to introduce themselves, they typically don't say that much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of the panelists to please introduce themselves and to follow my lead and to keep it brief and to the point. Midrand, can we start with you, please?
Okay, so my name is Midrand. I work for the South African Institution of Civil Engineering, and I'm part of the team that's leading the court action on behalf of the voluntary associations.
Titus?
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Titus Mate. I'm a professional engineer by qualification. I've been practicing in engineering for the last 20 years or so, both as an engineer doing designs and also as an engineering manager. I'm a former council member of ECSA, serving ECSA from 2012 up to 2016.
Great, thank you, Titus. Mike?
Thanks, Sean. Good afternoon. I'm Mike Deeks, also professional engineer. I was 2005 president of SAICE. I have to admit I was a fanatic. I was a fanatic when it came to carrying out a lot of ECSA's mandate. Served as a volunteer for probably nearly 25 years on the Professional Advisory Committee for Civil Engineering at ECSA. That's now been disbanded, and that's another story which we might discuss later on this evening. But you also will have noticed from the scrambling emails the danger of not updating your LinkedIn status, and for the last 2 years I've been retired. I was shown as being the MD of Bateman's Empowered Company, and that's not the case. So I've been retired for the last 2 years, still doing a little bit of work for ECSA, but nothing to do with registration at all. Thank you.
Chris?
Thank you. My name's Chris Campbell. I'm also a professionally registered civil engineer at that too. Yes, long pedigree or short pedigree. I'll give you the shorter version. Probably past president of the Engineering Council of South Africa. Been very actively involved with SAICE for many years. Currently am the CEO of Consulting Engineers South Africa. And we are also part of the VAs, despite being an industry association.
Good. Thanks very much. We are looking forward to what you have to say to us. But before we do that, I just want to remind you of what the objectives are for this particular discussion. Firstly, to create awareness of the role of ECSA and the voluntary associations, as well as the relationship that exists between those two parties. To provide an introduction and a background to the ECSA and voluntary associations case, and to create a platform upon which the VAs and ECSA give their version of events related to the litigation. And obviously what would have been first prize is to have had ECSA represented here, but we weren't able to achieve that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, without further ado, Midrand, you are first in the list. So if we could ask you please for your view on where things are at in terms of this case, and if you could keep it to about 5 minutes, please. Midrand.
Okay. So the issues around the Engineering Council of South Africa and the voluntary associations is purely a corporate governance issue. A governance issue in terms of how the new council was appointed. And everything centers around the unlawful appointment of that council. So what we had done was we gathered support from the voluntary associations, and there was resonance in several other underlying issues at the Engineering Council. The disbanding of the various committees, important committees, the decision making resting with certain officials and not going through protocol within the Engineering Council, and various other things which will unfold as the discussion unfolds. So we had got the support of about 15 voluntary associations, not just in spirit and in writing, but certainly in financial commitment as well. And that was an indicator that this was an issue affecting the industry. If people put money at something, then you know that it's a serious issue. Having understood the specific issues, which again will come out in the discussions, we lodged papers in the High Court, and this was probably about 3 months ago. And the way it works when you deal with this sort of issue is that both parties have 2 bites at the cherry in terms of explaining the position. So we had lodged our affidavit, that's the first one. Then the Department of Public Works and the Engineering Council gets to respond to that. They had done that, and then we put in a second view countering what they had just said, and now they're about to submit their second affidavit to counter what we had said. This was supposed to have been done by the 5th of June, their second affidavit. That was not done. Excuse me, they asked for an extension, so they have a month's extension, which we were happy to grant them, and that month ends on the 5th of next month. Immediately after that, then the High Court would set an actual physical appearing in court. So we would get a date within the next 3 months, counting from the 5th of July, where the voluntary associations would actually be represented physically in a court of law, in the High Court. Our issue is, if I could put it plainly, is that we believe in the value of professional registration. The PRN needs to mean something. In my case, I'm also a professionally registered civil engineer. And to me, it's a title that we can proudly attach to our names. Because with that comes a certain degree of responsibility that if I had to design something, then thousands of people are trusting that what I designed is not going to kill or hurt people or the economy. That's the value. It's not just a prestigious thing. It's an indicator of me taking responsibility. That's why we get paid better when you get your PRNH, because I'm able to take more responsibility. When an institution starts to make decisions that affect the value of that accreditation, it's wrong. It becomes a moral issue. And we are delighted to be part of the movement to try and rectify that issue. So I think in a nutshell, that's where we stand, Sean.
All right, that's very useful, thank you. Folks, and then have a bit of a discussion and then open the floor. So Titus, well, let me in fact, I'm tempted to take you in the order in which you're sitting, but I was given a list here, and so Chris, you are next in line, and then Titus, you're forewarned that you after that, and then Mike, you are least but not last.
Other way around, yeah.
No. I'm just checking, just want to see that everyone's paying attention. So, yeah, last but not least, of course. Chris, your views, please.
Okay, so, many may be wondering, so, what engineering council, that's individuals that get registered, why would Consulting Engineers South Africa be concerned? Well, fact of the matter is we are the biggest employer of professional engineers, technicians and technologists. And for our industry to survive, we must continue and always be able to provide a high quality of service for our clients, and also be mindful of a sustainable industry. You cannot allow for an industry to have a huge amount of risk exposure. And the risk exposure comes from where there is a person who is not adequately competent, hasn't gone through the credible registration process, who then is entrusted with designing a slab or managing an electrical installation. There's public life and health at risk there. And the way business runs, of course, is you can cover yourself for insurance, but no insurer is going to cover you if you haven't at least taken reasonable measures to mitigate against that risk. And that mitigation is to have competent, professional people making those decisions and signing off on those designs. So that is where Consulting Engineers South Africa comes into the picture. And indeed, I think as we progress through this, I want to make one qualification. And my colleague Midrand over here could maybe take a leaf from it, is we don't see this as a fight. I don't like the notion of people coming at each other as though this is a fight to the death. We cannot afford that for our industry. We need to find a way of resolving it. Unfortunately, as the voluntary associations, we found ourselves forced into a corner to take legal action. Given another alternative, we probably would have exercised that, but there was none other. So I think it's important to contextualize that, because in this battle, and I hate to call it a battle, in this impasse is a better word, there can be no winner and there should be no loser either. We should be looking at how do we get through this in the interests of our profession in total.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to come and be part of this panel. Perhaps let me just start off where Chris ended. My participation in these discussions and this challenge that we are facing at the VAs and ECSA, it's purely driven by finding a solution. It's not about VAs against ECSA. It's about the professionals that are involved in the engineering field. We have to, as much as possible, to quickly get to a solution. The longer this process takes, it actually affects our own reputation as an engineering profession in South Africa. It also affects our stakeholders. It affects our clients, for those that are servicing their clients. It also affects the state. We cannot continue being in this impulse. But, maybe from my own personal perspective, let me tell you why I'm getting involved in this process. I told you earlier, when I was introducing myself, I used to be a council member of ECSA. And I took that role or that assignment very seriously. And I'm aware of other colleagues as well that took that role very, very seriously. There was very little financial benefit for us getting involved in the ECSA activities. We did it for the love of the profession. So when we find ourselves in the current situation,
for some of us, it's very painful. And we would like to get to a conclusion very, very quickly. And as I participate in these forums, as a professional engineer, I'm guided by the Code of Conduct for Professional Engineers. And also as a member of my VA, the South African Institute of Chemical Engineers, I'm also guided by their own Code of Conduct. So it's very important to me that at all times I uphold the Code of Conduct of a registered professional in South Africa, as well as the Code of Conduct for the Voluntary Association that I belong to. So I thought I should just give you this background for you to understand what's driving me to participate in this process. It's not politics. It's not about the fight. I've got no grudges. It's also not about personal benefit. I'm participating in this project or in this process to save the profession. Our reputation, the South African reputation, the professionals involved in engineering in South Africa, our international reputation is at stake. Not only as registered professionals, also the poor students that are studying engineering in South Africa. They are studying engineering in the engineering programs in various universities and universities of technologies on the basis that when they graduate, whether it takes them 5 years, 6 years, or whatever, their qualification will be recognized. I just want to remind you that the role of ECSA, it's two important roles. One, accreditation of professional individuals that are practicing engineering in South Africa, whether as candidates or full professionals, it doesn't matter. It's also accreditation of academic programs that are offered in South Africa by the South African universities. Now, if the body that is entrusted with the integrity of the registration of professionals and accreditation of the academic programs, engineering programs in South Africa, is in question, it affects everybody. It affects the students, it affects the companies, it affects the country, it affects all stakeholders. So I must say, I'm a bit disappointed that this matter has not been resolved. The issue was raised. I'm going to just take very briefly, Program Director, take you through the history for those, just to give you the context, because I was there. And what I'm saying, even in the court of law, I'll repeat exactly the same thing. So I was there. Just very briefly. Some of you are aware of the nomination process of council members that have to serve on ECSA. There is a process. It's stipulated in the Engineering Act, and it's a law. Law means you apply it as it is. And if you go to the Act, there's a very specific section that talks about the nomination process. And it stipulates exactly, in detail, how the nomination process is supposed to be followed. Now, in this case, when an old council term is coming to an end, there's a nomination process that gets followed. The voluntary associations, they nominate individuals. The registered professionals, they nominate individuals. The public, they nominate individuals to serve on the council. The state, they nominate individuals to serve on the council. And there's usually a panel that is elected to actually oversee this whole process. Now, because I was there, and I need to be careful because this matter is still before court. So what I'm telling you now is in the public domain, but I may not tell you some of the details. It was 46 names. It was supposed to be 50 names. And I'll talk briefly about why it was not 50 names. So the old council sat sometime just before the end of March and approved that list. And when we approved that list, it was on the basis that a board process has been followed. The individuals that have been nominated are credible, they can serve the council. We approved the list. It was 46 names instead of 50 names. And the Act says within 60 days of submission of that list to the minister must appoint the council. It does not say the minister may appoint or whatever. It says the minister must appoint. However, in the event that there is insufficient nominations, the Act then says the minister, in consultation with the council, may appoint the council. So that clause in the Act allows for the 4 names that I spoke about, 46 instead of 50. So maybe if there's not enough nominations, then the minister can then perhaps request for additional names and then propose the names to the council, and then the council says, yes, we accept these names. Now we've got the full list of 50. So we can then go ahead with the appointment. But the underliner in this is in consultation with council. Now, I was a council member from 2012 up to 2016, and I was also the chair of what we used to call Central Registration Committee. So all the PACs, those that are familiar with the terminology, used to report to my committee that I used to chair. Because I was the chair of the CRC, I was also an EXCO member. So at no point did I sit in an EXCO meeting, or did I consider an ad hoc submission to change the list that was approved by the outgoing council end of March 2016. At no point whatsoever. So I can stand here and say this without a shadow of a doubt, that council was not consulted when the list was changed. So my expectation, if the minister, after submitting the original list to the minister, my expectation was that if the minister had some concerns, those concerns would be noted by the ECSA administration, and then a council meeting will be called, or even if it's a special meeting, to say, guys, your original list of 46 has now been amended. These are the reasons for the amendment and whatever. Now let's vote, or let's, through a consent. So my expectation, if the minister, after submitting the original list to the minister, my expectation was that if the minister had some concerns, those concerns would be noted by the ECSA administration, and then a council meeting will be called, or even if it's a special meeting, to say, guys, your original list of 46 has now been amended. These are the reasons for the amendment and whatever. Now let's vote, or let's, through a consensus, arrive at the 50 names that we can then finalize and submit to the minister. This did not happen. I can guarantee you that. Also, the appointment from the date of end of March, around the 26th or something, when the council said, the Act says within 60 days, the minister must appoint council. This did not happen. So there's 2 issues. One, the list was changed. So between March and sometime around August, when the new names were read to the outgoing council by the ECSA chief executive, again, I must emphasize, were read to the outgoing council. They were not submitted for endorsement or ratification. They were read to the outgoing council by the chief executive of ECSA. When we then requested, let's have a list, let's have a document circulated so we can see what changes have been made, etc. That was not honored when we requested that. So some of the members that were very concerned, including myself, about the whole process, the integrity of the whole process, then raised issues But the ECSA Council at the time and the president of ECSA could not answer the questions. In some of the meetings was not even present. The matter was then escalated by some of the outgoing council members, escalated to the Council for Built Environment, for them to investigate and intervene and maybe get the minister involved, create an awareness of what the issues are. And indeed that process was followed. A preliminary report was issued by CBE, and the minister was informed, the Director General was also informed. And the recommendation from that report, because I'm now saying this because it's in the public domain. If you go to the court record, you get all this information, by the way. The preliminary outcome of the CBE investigation was that there seems to be something that has gone wrong here. We are recommending to the minister not to appoint the new council. Extend the old council term by 6 months. That 6 months will allow for proper investigation to actually deal with whatever concerns that some of the outgoing members had. That proposal was rejected. Instead, the inauguration and appointment of the new members went ahead. So, irrespective of the fact that we highlighted that the 60-day issue was not adhered to as per the Engineering Act, irrespective of the matter that the list was changed, we have no idea. Maybe when the court case is concluded, we'll be able to see who actually changed the list. Our expectation and my expectation would have been, after consultation with the minister, after the original list was submitted, if the minister had some changes to make, etc., that it comes back to the old. An ECSA council that is very questionable. But the right thing to do, was to go to a court of law. A court of law will look at all the activities that took place, will interpret what the Act says, interpret what actions was taken by ECSA, by the old council, by the minister, and maybe make a ruling. And it's the only way we can actually get to a conclusion of this matter. But of course, maybe later we'll talk about what are the implications. I've just outlined to you that we may be sitting with a very important body in the South African society, because ECSA is responsible for registration of academic programs, responsible for registration of professional engineering practitioners, but even for renewals. For some of us that are sitting here, we're probably due for renewal. Now, is your renewal valid? It's a big question. And I would have expected the whole country to be up in arms because we're dealing with public safety. Imagine tomorrow a bridge collapses, or a chemical plant, there's an explosion. And then there's an investigation that gets conducted. And that investigation concludes that the engineer that approved the design or approved the operating parameters, etc., was actually incompetent. We, as an engineering profession in South Africa, what are we going to say? Are we going to say, no, we were just waiting for a court ruling? The court case may take for 3 years, 4 years, or whatever the case might be. So it is high time that all of us, not fight, but all of us get together and say, how can we resolve this impulse that we're sitting weeks, if possible? If it was me, it would be within days, because a lot is at stake. Not only public safety, there's also people that have professional indemnity with insurances, etc. It's a very serious matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Titus. Folks, I allowed Titus to go well over the 5 minutes, but I think that the storytelling was really essential to the further discussion, so thank you very much for that. I worked with Mike once before, which is why I thought I'd take a dig at him. Mike, last, but by no means least.
Thank you, Sean. I'm very happy to have given up some of my time allocation, because I think we just had a very valuable account of what is a very shameful set of events in terms of the appointment of the 2017 or 2016 council. I think that, and I think we're all agreed that the appointment of the statutory council has very, very wide ramifications. It has in terms of its position in the engineering space that we occupy. And unfortunately, I think that my personal read of the situation is that this is in many ways linked to a change in ECSA's attitude towards the voluntary associations, ourselves and other learned societies and bodies such as SAICE, that one sees a kind of that we're being treated with some disdain. So in other words, the objections that are made by members of our institutions who happen to serve on that council are ignored or ridden over. That this is really the way ECSA seems to be operating towards the voluntary associations. And you know, ECSA has something like, and Titus and Chris will probably know better than me, probably something like 80 staff members. They rely to deliver their statutory mandate in terms of the Act on about 400 volunteers, and those volunteers are drawn from the voluntary associations. And it's those volunteers who ensure that we can live up to the requirements of the Washington Accord in terms of accreditation of engineering programs at tertiary institutions, in terms of the peer evaluation of professionals who are presenting for registration, be they engineers or technologists or technicians or certificated engineers, that we can actually demonstrate that peers, professional people already operating in this environment, have applied their minds in deciding who's worthy to get professional ticket. And you will know, and there's quite a few volunteers I recognize in the audience here tonight, people who've given many, many years of their life to the process of registration, of doing professional reviews of candidates presenting for registration as PR Rangers, who are now have been told that they're not really required any longer. They will manage, somehow the administration, ECSA will manage to do that job themselves, and they will co-opt some people who are probably a little bit younger than us and certainly a lot less experienced than us, and probably a lot more compliant, and that they somehow will cobble together panels who can undertake that work. And it's really a great shame, and I think that a lot of the people in this audience will agree with me on that basis. So that is really all I wanted to say. I think that, as I say, I think the events around the appointment of the council are symptomatic of a greater malaise at ECSA and a shift in their attitude towards the VAs.
Thank you very much to the panelists. I'm going to generate a bit of discussion through some questions. Midrand, I'm going to start with you. I facilitated a session for SAICE perhaps 18 months ago, where the topic was building a better relationship with ECSA. What's gone wrong? What is behind this?
So in terms of the actual process that we undertook to resolve the matter in an amicable fashion, Titus has already discussed some of it, but if I can just go into some detail.
The individuals, the council was appointed, and we believed we had evidence that the council was unlawfully appointed. Huge risk, because what the Engineering Professions Act says is that council registers individuals and council accredits university programs. If that council is an unlawful council, what happens to the actual accreditation of the universities and the actual registration of individuals? Therein lies the risk. So based on that, we had approached ECSA, and when I say approached, it was to speak to the old council and to revisit the appointment of the new council, but that was blocked. It was blocked by the senior administration and the president of ECSA. Failing that, we went to the CBE, and And the CBE, the order of rank is that you've got ECSA, and then above that you've got the Council for the Built Environment, and then you've got the Department of Public Works, and then you've got Parliament and the Portfolio Committee. So we'd approached ECSA, no joy, CBE. The CBE, very interestingly, conducted an independent investigation.
The outcome of that independent investigation was, yes, there's a problem in this new appointment of this new council, or the appointment of the new council.
That was essentially what Titus was describing.
That was right. And they had written both to ECSA and the minister to state that there is a problem, revisit the process, extend the duration of the old council so they may continue the work in the interim. The ministry wrote back saying, no, we're actually satisfied with the process followed. This is an actual document that's in the public domain at the moment. The engineering council sent that communication to us to say, no, but everything is kosher. There's no problem. So we failed there. Then we had a meeting with the Department of Public Works. Some of us, Chris and I, were present together with 3 of our other colleagues, one of which is in the room, Lord Liguru. We met with the minister. In that meeting, the minister was present, the deputy minister, the DG, and I can't remember, but there was probably about 5 or 6 of his advisors in that discussion. And the message that we got was, we are insufficiently close to the matter for us to deliberate on it. Now, my frustration in that particular meeting was, you've got these high-ranking professionals and advisors, and you knew we were coming, and you said that you're insufficiently prepared for the meeting. So, no joy there. They had committed to review the notes and documents and get back to the Voluntary Association representation at that meeting within a period of 2 weeks, I think it was. It's now gone since September last year. It's now we in almost end of June. The next year, we are yet to hear a peep from the Department of Public Works. Failed that, I personally went down to the Portfolio Committee in Parliament, the Department of Public Works Portfolio Committee. I had a personal chat with Ben Martins, and we had chatted about the scenario, so he is also fully aware of what was going on. But again, no actual plan to resolve any matter. I'm explaining this in detail so the audience is aware that we had tried everything possible in a modern democracy to resolve the matter. The ultimate call, after following these steps, was that one needed to go to the High Courts. And so as one can imagine, that the relationship between ECSA and the voluntary associations is fairly tense. So that's where we stand right now with the relationship.
All right, thanks for your answer. It was a great answer, and I think everyone benefited from it. It didn't really answer my question, though, and I'm going to hold that question because I'm curious. I want to understand what's behind all of this. I think Titus gave a very eloquent description of what's at stake there. And let me put this to you, Titus. You talk about your primary driver is a love for the profession. You talk about the future of the profession being at stake. I mean, those are very bold statements. Is it really that serious?
Yeah, thank you, Program Director. It is very serious. You'll recall that, or you probably know that ECSA for South Africa is a member of a number of international accords. The Washington Accords, which recognizes engineering qualifications, the Dublin Accord, and the Sydney Accord, and I'm told that some of them started asking questions. What's happening in South Africa? A year ago, I actually interacted with some of them, and they were asking these questions. What's going on at ECSA? Now, this was before the incident of the appointment of the new council. I'm assuming there were other issues that we were probably raising. So our credibility, not only ECSA, our credibility as a country is at stake. The credibility of the engineering profession is at stake. If you look at the legal fraternity in South Africa, look at the medical fraternity in South Africa, do you hear about similar type of incidences? So what's at stake here? It's more than just the current council that has been appointed, etc. It's the entire profession. What will make a grade 8 pupil today to say, you know what, one day I would like to be a civil engineer, a chemical engineer, electrical engineer, etc. Remember, they are now very social media savvy type of people. So all what we are talking about, they read about it. They read about the mess that is going on in the engineering profession. What do you think will make them to say, you know what, I would like to aspire to be a professional engineer one day? If they read about these stories. And look at how the legal fraternity in South Africa is functioning at the moment. It is very robust, very independent, and this is what I would like to see the engineering profession being, not what we're currently seeing at the moment.
Thank you. Chris, a question for you. What I've gleaned from what Titus has said is that there are kind of two issues here, and the one is just about the procedural irregularity in terms of the appointment of the council. So your argument is that it's actually not a valid council because it has been constituted outside the dictates of the law. Okay. And perhaps a second issue then is who is on that panel. What of those two issues is the more important? Is it around the validity of the appointment in a procedural sense, or is it around who is on that panel?
I think it's got nothing to do with who's on the panel. It's got to do with the process that was followed, in a sense where the integrity of the process has been compromised, where an institution which is entrusted with a code of ethics is not reflective of that, is symptomatic of other ills that could creep in. And that is where the risk lies.
The question that I wanted to put to you is, what happened with the portfolio committee? You mentioned that you went there, but nothing happened. And just keep it as brief as you can. And then I'd like to ask you a specific question as well, Titus, but let's hear from you.
I didn't meet with the actual committee, I met with the chairperson of the committee.
Yes.
We had a discussion, I explained the entire history. I was cut short, so I really spent 15 minutes with Ben Martins. And he said that he was going to.
To your knowledge, has there been a
No.
debate of this issue within the portfolio committee? So we have that. Titus, what I want to ask you is that my understanding from the way that you've conveyed this is, in fact, there is no ECSA currently, because the outgoing council was disbanded, and the new council has been implemented unlawfully. Am I missing something?
Yeah, in terms of the governance and the procedure and the act, I mean, the law is a law. If you don't follow the law, then you've got a council that is appointed illegally.
Yes.
But what's more concerning for me, in that council, we've got professional registered persons. And I always wonder what's going through their minds. I mean, of course, we've got the same code of conduct that we must uphold. Some of them actually come from the very same VAs that are taking this matter to court. Now, surely, for them to maintain their own integrity, this information is now in the public domain. We can no longer say, no, we're waiting for the court case because we don't know what actually transpired. So surely, they have an obligation, based on the code of conduct as professionals, to actually do something.
But if you will, Titus, just briefly, I mean, do we have an ECSA at the moment? Or, I mean, in process,
let me just clarify it. Imagine you appoint a president without following the Presidential Act.
Perhaps a bad example, Titus. Think of another one.
Imagine you appoint the public protector without actually following the full process.
Just very quickly, I heard the other day the only thing in this country that's not run by the Guptas is the Comrades Marathon. So from your point of view, technically there is no engineering council.
Technically, all laws are equal before a court of law.
Mike, a question for you. Is this not just a bunch of people that are disgruntled because their preferred candidates didn't end up on the council?
No, I don't think so. And I don't think that they are. It's the people who are left off who are really at the forefront of this action. the VAs are up in arms about what we see as being riding roughshod over process, and I think it is a I know that Mangland didn't want to call it a fight, but it is a fight, and it is certainly a fight worth having, we believe, in the interest of the profession. I just wanted to make a small point. You know, I mentioned earlier on the extent to which ECSA depends on the volunteers to deliver its mandate. Yes. Wits University's programs are up for accreditation in July or August. I think it's August this year. And that means that a visit team of probably in the order of 30 or 40 volunteers needs to be assembled, covering all disciplines of engineering, broken up into teams, each of them with a visit leader, with a team leader, and made up of a mix of academics and people from industry. Those are the volunteers that actually help ECSA to deliver its mandate. That's an incredibly important mandate to deliver. It's required in terms of our agreement with the Washington Accord. And quite often we have Washington Accord visitors who actually come along and they make sure that our process has the rigor that's required in terms of that accord. Now, you've got a situation at the moment where a lot of people, a lot of volunteers, and I think we will probably hear that some of them are sitting in this audience tonight, are actually finished with ECSA and actually don't want to participate or volunteer their services any longer because of the way they've been treated. They've been disbanded as reviewers, they've been disbanded as committee members, and they're thinking, well, go to hell. Without those people, those functions, such as the Wits University program accreditation visit, cannot happen properly.
Sure. Chris, very briefly, please. The change of ministers. You made the point about a person with a medical qualification not applying to be a professional engineer. I must say, when I see what orthopedic surgeons do these days, I think they would be better served by a degree in mechanical engineering. But we're having a change of minister as well. How does that change things? Do you think there's hope in terms of the new minister that you might be able to somehow stave off the court proceedings?
I actually like the way you acknowledged earlier the fact that I haven't had an opportunity to say much, and now you also put the challenge for me to actually do this in as quick a time as possible. So there's a bit of a conflict of desire. I think my reading of the situation is that it is not necessarily about the minister. It's exactly as Mangland said. There are very few people that changed in that department. When we had a meeting with them, you had the minister, the sitting minister, you had the deputy minister, the DG and various other officials. And I think the only one that's moved on is the minister himself.
So the DG is the same?
I think the DG is the same, right? So there's enough institutional memory there to acknowledge and to want to do something. In fact, at one stage we did assume that there was an appetite, and Mangland skipped that in his explanation, there was an appetite to review the decisions that had been made, and then we'd have another discussion. That was from the deputy minister. We thought we had hope, and then the carpet was pulled out from under us because that all went quiet. So I think
the jury's out. Change of minister,
I don't think much is going to change.
All right, super. Folks, the floor is open. Okay. Again, please, can I ask you to just keep your comments, your questions short? Just identify yourself, and then let's hear. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to take it in the order in which you're sitting. So I'm going to start with you, sir. We have a roving mic. Who you are, and then please your question. We had a roving mic.
Isn't that the roving mic?
I can speak loud.
Oh, you can just walk around. You are the roving mic.
I'm the sitting mic.
Right. That's so, did you see the importance of the Voluntary Association here? Profit is mic to keep things going.
Thanks, Mike. Ronnie Schoenberg, and I've been PRN Civil, and I've been involved in reviewing and mentoring and that sort of thing for a number of years. A very, very quick question. I'm not quite clear. The 46 names were originally nominated. How many of those 46 are actually on the new council?
Brief answer. Do you know, Titus?
Yeah, maybe let me just respond. The names, I think 5 names were removed, and the 5 names were then replaced. The people that were removed from that, and then the gap. Remember, I said there was 46 instead of 50. Then there was another additional 4 to make up the 50 that was added to that.
Okay.
So new names 4 plus 5, it's 9. 9 names that were added
Okay.
to the original list that was approved by the outgoing council.
Please go ahead.
I withdrawn by my candidate member, technologist. I've got about few questions. Maybe I'll keep it short and 3. Maybe keep 3 questions on it.
Just one, please. Just one.
Okay. I would just want to find out. I'm not sure if I got you right. If there was a invitation extended to the current council and to Public Works for this panel here tonight, and
Yes.
also, also for SAICE, is it the same sentiment to other voluntary association in your court case, or it's only SAICE but with the support of other
VAs, yeah.
yeah, VAs?
Excellent. Magdalene, very quick response, please. The 2 questions.
Yeah.
Do you want me to?
Yeah. What was the first question again?
It was around the.
If the invitation was extended.
Oh yes. Yeah.
So that was why I asked you specifically, and then it also
Okay,
went
so-
straight
all
out
right.
of my head.
Okay, so it's the clever buggers. Yeah. No. Yeah. It was to extend the period of the old council to get it.
No.
Magdalene,
The question was for the panel discussion tonight.
Yeah.
Was ECSA invited?
Oh, yes.
And what about DPW?
I don't know about DPW, but I know ECSA was definitely invited and they turned us down.
Okay, so they didn't want to be here. And then the second part of the question, which
The second part of the question is that there's 15 voluntary associations that are participating. They are fully aware of the facts and they have similar concerns that we've articulated. So I cannot say all 15 are participating for the same reasons, but I personally keep them abreast every month. I send them a report. And I must in the same breath say that there are other voluntary associations that are not party to the process.
Right, so it's not so it's not every voluntary association within engineering.
There are about 43 voluntary associations. We approached 23 because that's the contact details we had, and of the 23, 17 responded. 2 said they could not participate because they didn't have funding. So we said that's fine.
This is very large, but so please, will you pass the microphone on? Let's just give everyone
Hi, my name is Vila Naidu. I'm a candidate engineer. I just want to find out, I know Titus mentioned, okay, that if the current council is not valid, and if this legal action process can take a few years, what happens to those of us that are candidates that have submitted our registration?
Yeah, I can respond to that.
This guy there.
I can just respond to that. The applications are being processed. I mean, I've actually signed off some of the submissions myself. So they are being processed and people are being interviewed and are being registered. But the question is, when that decision is taken to register you, whether 2 years down the line will not be reversed, that's an issue.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility.
Correct.
So Reggie Holiday. Magdalene, you said you were part of the court case. What was the rebuttal, the first rebuttal from ECSA? What were their reasons for this? How they justify their decision? Is that in the public domain? Sorry.
Yeah. It's a very good question.
Because that might give her the reason to
Yeah,
actually.
I'm keen to hear this as well.
So a very interesting question and very interesting response that we got from the Department of Public Works and the Engineering Council. We had said that there was a change in those names. 6 names were removed and 9 names were added, new names. The only way, according to the law, the Engineering Professions Act, it says if you want to make those changes, it must happen in consultation with the council, right? Nowhere does it say that the president or the CEO or the department or the minister or anybody in that administration may unilaterally make those changes. Ironically, they used exactly the same line to say, based on this line, we have the right to make changes.
As
Exactly the same line.
It's a misinterpretation of the law, maybe.
Yes, but I mean, to us as professionals, we don't see any room for misinterpretation in that line.
Agreed. You need to pass it on, yeah? As I know I'm chasing, but I just want to give everyone an opportunity, please.
Des Lange, I have a civil technologist background, and I've been sort of personally involved with the development of professional technicians and technologists for about 38 years now. And one thing I'd just like to add, and I'd like to ask you to think about this very carefully. I have a few names here. Conru, okay, Mike Deeks is here, and Ronnie Schoenberg. I'm not sure who else goes back that far with SAICE. And Eunice Bolling. Where is Eunice today? I think that we need to get someone like Eunice to come forward and explain how SAICE, civil engineering industry in South Africa, has taken the bull by the horns since the late 70s to bring transformation into the professional industry of engineering. It was a bit difficult for Eunice because after 1976, when he was a student, he didn't have a very good name in government. But I was with Eunice with the first school that we opened, Saturday school we opened in Soweto in 1970 and 1980. And it was just amazing what happened. How we were able to get kids from Standard 7 up to come into the profession. And at the same time I was in trouble because I was allowing them in to the Department of Civil Engineering at the old TWR, Technology Run. And I was actually going over the quota system where we were allowed 1% of people of other races to come into our programs in those days.
All right, so the transformation agenda goes way back, is what you're arguing, to those original... Right.
100-year anniversary report, you'll see a lot in there as well.
Okay, I don't think there's a response required really. Let's just move on. Yes, the gentleman in the blue jersey.
Jay Campbell, consulting engineer. I've been a member of this institution since '78 and a fellow of the British Civil since '81. I have the great privilege of being a
Could you just talk into the microphone, please, so everyone can hear?
I had the great privilege of being a local examiner for the British Civils for 3 years. I'm only allowed to do it for 3 years, so sorry, Ryan, you couldn't have carried on. So I just comment on ideas. Washington Accord has been mentioned. When the London delegates came out to sign that cross-recognition, a mutual friend that I trained with suggested I go out and have a chat with them, which I did at the airport. They were shocked, and I mean shocked, to discover that ECSA was a politically appointed body. You can have all the nominations in the world, the minister sits there at the end, as he's done here, that's it. So the first suggestion for consideration is that we insist in our current democracy that we elect our representative to ECSA, and the minister will have no say in it. He's an elected person, so that would be the end of that one. The 1968, when the first SACB Act came in, it was claimed that it was based on the Ontario Engineers Act. Well, I was registered in Ontario from 1960 till they put me on the retired list. I can assure you the only thing in common between the Ontario Act and the SACB Act were the two words professional engineers in the title. The rest was no connection.
Sorry, I'm not following the point that you're making.
They're claiming that it ties in with foreign overseas stuff, and it doesn't. The other suggestion, my fellow clansman there has commented about the whole council starting every 4 years. The Ontario system was very good. A third of the council was elected every year, so you had a 2/3 continuation. Now that's a suggestion that I'd like to...
I'm gonna ask you please to draw your comments to a close. Is there one last point that you want to make quickly, please?
The UK Civils celebrates its 200th anniversary next year. It's the oldest engineering body in the world, and the system they've evolved of examinations where you submit your CV, you submit your samples of your work, You have an interview, and the interview you can really take guys apart, believe me, and then you have essays to write. Okay, the essays show whether the guy can write English, which is maybe not important these days, but it does open up whether they can think on the subject.
All right, you I remember from one of the previous discussions, and I don't want to besmirch your good name, but I remember that you were not very polite to the gentleman that was here from ECSA. But I'm not giving you another opportunity to
If telling the truth is being impolite, I was impolite.
So, all right, we
Shall I respond
yes
to some of the comments?
Yes, let's.
Okay, if I could just get the gentleman's name. I was really honored to hear you and the Eunice Ballard story. I've got great respect for Eunice. What's your name, sir? Des Lange.
Des Lange. Do you mind if I get a hold of you, Des? All right, thanks. No, you don't mind. All right. So I want to respond to the comments that the second gentleman, Dave, made in terms of why it is important.
Sorry, just before you do that, guys, we're on 6 o'clock, which was when we said we would end. Can we run on for another 15 minutes? Yes. Okay, if you need to go, by all means, we'll understand. Magdalene.
Right, so why it's important that we note that ECSA is an organ of state. It's governed by the Engineering Professions Act. Here's the risk. If ECSA is an organ of state, depending on who's in power, the rules for registration and university accreditation, separately, may change. So you have a government in place at the moment. They would say, all right, we need X number of registrations in this race category. I'm not saying what kind of race. The risk is that we could change the rules for professional registration to accommodate that. There is no control from the professional side to say we need to maintain a certain standard. ECSA would set the rules as to how one could register. Being an organ of state, if another department says we need to register more females, for example, we need to adjust the rules to accommodate that. There is that risk. What about the rules that keep a constant technical requirement for the professional? That is why it's important that we understand the risk associated with ECSA being an organ of state.
Good, thank you. The gentleman there? Then I'll come to you.
In the context of maybe what's happening now, I just wanted to, I've picked up that one of the problems is that after this new council came into being, they changed the registration processes, and it's something that we are worried about. Then my question is, how can 9 new individuals manage to capture a council of 50?
Okay, so don't ask me that, I'll give you an answer. All right, but I want to check, I just want to test something, because I didn't understand that the registration process had been changed.
It has been.
It has been changed. Okay, important.
And following ahead with that, how can 15 VAs not manage to influence their representatives to vote along their party lines?
Well, Chris, you wanted to say something. Can you answer that question, or should we get the response from someone else first? Because I think, again, there's quite a powerful word in there, and the word is vote.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard that too.
We heard quite a few things, but I think the response to that question, first of all, there's a long line of exactly that question. I think Ron started with it, and then Dave. The council term, when you have a new council, you don't have a renewal of all 50. You're supposed to have at least, I mean, what we aspired to was at least 50% continuity, where you can serve 2 terms. Okay, that number had been eroded slightly, and I think there's a lower limit that you can go to. The advent of that means that you then can bring on, you can ignore some of the continuity and the institutional memory. You can bring along a lot of newer people who still need to be comfortable with the role that they have to play. So that's where these decisions could go awry, because much like our South African system, people are scared to ask questions in public because they feel silly. And in that environment there, pretty much the same happens. So some person doesn't want to put his head up and say, actually, you know what, didn't understand that. So you go along with those who are making the most noise. And that's where the problem emanates from. So it's not really a question of capturing. It's more a case of, have people actually gotten to know and realize the role that they have to play. And I'm even going to make a rather bold statement. I think too many people try to get into the council so that they can have it on their CVs. They do not do the hard work that goes into the committees. It's a bit like being in Parliament. You're actually doing nothing unless you participate in committees where the real thought and think tank and the policy, those develop. And that's what the Engineering Council needs.
Thank you. Titus, can we pass, and then we'll take that gentleman. Titus, let's hear from you quickly.
I just want to make a correction. The registration process was not changed by the new council. It was changed from the paper application process to the online application process, even by the old outgoing council. What the new council has done was to collapse some of the committees. We used to have the professional advisory committees for mechanical, electrical, etc., etc. That's been collapsed into one master committee. That a mechanical engineer must now look at the civil engineer and declare them competent, and actually approve their application for registration.
All right, so this is way beyond just the compliance with the law. I mean, we're already seeing actions on the part of this new engineering council that are in themselves very concerning. The gentleman in the back, please.
Johan Cook, I was on the registration committee for professional technologists. Question for Titus. Seeing that he was on the central registration committee, the accusation was made previously that us older guys that look like me, were gatekeeping and keeping people of other races out. Did ECSA look into that, and was there any figures that you could mention? What was the outcome of that investigation?
Thank you. Others?
You've got inside information. I'll respond to that question. I spent, I served 4 years as a council member. I was the chair of CRC, the Central Registration Committee. One of the first issues that we had to deal with as a new, the old outgoing council, was this issue of gatekeeping. In fact, it was a request that came from the ministry to say, let's look into this issue. Let's actually introduce even recording of professional reviews to make sure that there is no biasness when the reviewers are actually assessing the applicant. So I headed a working group that actually looked into this issue. We looked at the statistics, we looked at the race, gender, discipline, etc., to actually see if there's any evidence whatsoever in terms of discriminating against blacks, against women, etc. We found no evidence whatsoever. And I presented my findings to the old council. It was well received. However, in some cases where there is maybe a request for a review or a challenge of the decision made by the council, we then said we will allow recording of the second professional review, etc. But I don't think that was well received. Probably that's one of the reasons I wasn't.
This gentleman here. And then Vaughan.
Mr. Mangan, you mentioned that you know who changed the names. Is there a particular reason why you didn't mention the name today? It's legal perhaps. And secondly, what's the sort of benefit of self-interest of doing so? Is it purely, as Chris mentioned, or to have this on their CVs?
So So no, we do know who changed the names. That information is public. I didn't want the discussion to be diverted into a personal attack on any individuals.
But Mangla, let me help you with that. Is there anything significant about who that person is?
What, the title of the individual?
No, yes, the title.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So there is a suggestion of some impropriety at that.
Yes, in relation to the Engineering Professions Act, you know that clause that we've been quoting, that individual contravened that clause. So I simply didn't want us to go into naming and shaming and abusing that sort of thing. You know, I wanted to keep it around corporate governance and salvaging of the PRN and the profession and that sort of thing. If you want to, I'm happy to divulge that privately to you. It is public information. If you go onto the court's websites and that sort of thing, you can get it off there as well. Just as a matter of interest, that individual's name has also been punted around in the media in the last 2 weeks or so. So for also other shenanigans that needs to be approved or needs to be proved. And the second question was?
Self-interest or benefit?
Okay, you asked this question as to what do we think the actual interest is for doing this kind of thing? I think if you look at the actions and I don't know what the motives are, if you look at the actions of the Engineering Council, it's marginalizing the voluntary associations to do things like continuous professional development. Now, if you know anything about institutional arrangements in South Africa, CPD generates a lot of cash for the voluntary associations. The view to take this away from the voluntary associations and let it reside with ECSA, it means money. So I suspect, and there are other examples, I suspect the leaders at ECSA are seeing pots of gold and dollar signs. It's not quite like that. Once you actually get into the game and you realize that it's more about the upkeep of the profession rather than just making money galore.
Because you're going to have to return that suit after the No, but I think, I don't want to be facetious about it, but I think the answer was well received. Would you pass the microphone? And folks, we are running out of time, but just to say, we'll come back to you. Just to say that, of course, there are, I believe, some refreshments afterwards and a great opportunity to chat to the panelists and amongst yourselves. So where's Vaughan? And then I think if we can have the microphone here.
Well, this is a nice surprise. I'm Vaughan Rimbold. I'm CEO of the South African Institution of Mechanical Engineering. For the record, we are not part of the 14 who are taking the minister and ECSA to court. I'm not sure if I want this recorded, but really we don't feel that good about giving lawyers our money to sort out our problems. And if we can't sort it out amongst ourselves, then there's no way we're going to give it to them to sort it out. But having said that, we have expressed and voiced concern about the manner in which the current council was appointed. But we are also a little concerned that of the 50 council members, 40 or 41 seem to have been unaffected by this process. And yet we're not aware that those 41 have yet to stand up, as professionals should, and voice their concern. And I think it's about time that those who are sitting in those seats at council, if they do not agree with what's been going on, man up, woman up, whatever it is, and get off your chair and say something. Because if you're not prepared to say something from within the heart of this organisation, I don't think it's really fair to expect everybody else who's outside of it to make the noise.
How does the quote go? Evil happens when good people fail to. Thank you. Yeah. This lady here.
Hi, my name is Janisha Budia, civil engineer. I wanted to find out if the engineering fraternity is being questioned, and why, as well as the universities, why aren't there representatives from the universities? Why aren't they stepping up? Why aren't they doing something about it? Because, I don't think that a big enough sort of noise is being made about this. So what can we do as individuals to assist in this fight?
Right, the timing of that question is excellent, because what I'd very much like to do in wrapping up is to think about some solutions. But I think a very important question, why the academic or training institutions not aligning themselves with this process? Anyone?
I think maybe Mike, if you can have a go.
Yeah.
Sorry. And then this gentleman here, and then I'm going to call it quits.
I think that they are. it is on. I think that they are. The academics are, most of them, many of them, are members
sorry,
of this.
it's not working.
Use another mic.
See what happens when you give it up. You never get it back.
Let's not press down.
No, not that one.
Yeah, it was up, yeah. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to say, sorry, I think that they are. A lot of the academics are certainly part of our process here. We've actually drawn them into that discussion, and they are assisting us with this campaign, for want of a better word. We're not using the word fight or battle anymore. And unfortunately, a lot of academics, as you possibly also know, aren't professionally registered and actually are not members of this institution. But those who are, definitely in our case, the civil engineering academics are very aware of this situation and are participating in the same way as you are. It might be said for a lot of other members, what are they doing? Why aren't we actually marching on the union buildings or something? Well, that's not really the way engineers protest, but they certainly are very much aware of the situation. They are represented on, or were represented on, those committees which have been collapsed, and they are very, very aware of the severity of this particular situation we find ourselves in. I just wanted to make one point, Chairman. Somebody said, why are we not able to get our members to vote along party lines or something like that? Well, we don't have a civil engineers caucus that says that when civil engineers or technologists or technicians are appointed to serve on that 50-man ECSA council, that they have to wear our badge and actually fight for us. They are there in their personal, professional capacity, and they do what is good for engineering, period. So that's really their call. They're not actually there to serve narrowly.
Good evening. My name is Kiran Ransom. I just want to clarify, you said there's 400 voluntary people who do assist engineering council. So
in that order, it's a rough step, but it's...
So what is happening with the process now? How many people are actually still involved, and is the Voluntary Association still assisting ECSA with the registration process?
It's a good question. It's a good question, and it's a good question. It's a lousy mic. It's a good question, and I don't have the exact figures. I certainly know that the professional advisory committees, civil engineering, we had about 20 members, a little over 20 members. Some of those people had actually served for 30 years. It might be said that they probably were past their sell-by date, but certainly they were people who were incredibly committed and who had what you mentioned is that institutional knowledge, and certainly were peers who were skilled in doing their duty. Those have all been collapsed. So if you take civil and the other 11 branches of engineering, they all had committees. All of those committees, as Titus said, have been collapsed. So that immediately puts, 250 maybe people into pasture. People who are reviewers like Ronnie Schurenberg. Ronnie, I don't think you're doing reviews anymore, are you? You are. Yes. But I think a lot of your colleagues have decided that it's not worth the candle, that they are not prepared to be co-opted outside of the SAICE family and be engaged directly by ECSA. So certainly a lot of people have actually said, some in our PAC said, if they asked me to be an assessor, to look at experience appraisals, the answer is no. The way they've treated us, they could whistle. And so that's the unfortunate thing, that they have certainly lost hundreds of volunteers. I don't know the number that have gone.
So I want to draw things to a conclusion. As I've indicated, there will be opportunities to talk amongst yourselves, to talk to the panelists, and I think capitalize on that. I was asked in concluding to try and draw things towards some level of solution, and I need to admit to the fact that I'm definitely not an engineer. I'm actually an environmental consultant, and I'm often puzzled as to why I end up here facilitating these discussions. That's why I don't have a tie either. But
from knowing nothing about this 2.5 hours ago to the discussion that we've had, I mean, as an outsider, I am more than convinced as to the serious nature of it. And I want to suggest to you, and coming back to the discussion, Midrand, where we spoke about trying to get a better relationship between the voluntary associations and the Engineering Council, I want to suggest to you that this, in a way, is a watershed moment. And I think the choices you make in terms of how this happens actually could turn this into a potential opportunity in terms of building that relationship. What I'd like to do is I'd like to thank the panel members. I think their stories were very compelling, and certainly I appreciated hearing them. So A round of applause, please, for our panel members. And then I would be remiss if I didn't finish off by taking a dig at the civil engineering profession. I was alerted to the fact that there is a new oxymoron now. I always like to use military intelligence. I love the fact that oxymoron has the word moron in it. But I like to use military intelligence, and then I like to use civil engineers. All right. But a new one, and take us away with you. A new oxymoron is alternative facts. Because alternative facts are not facts. Folks, thanks very much indeed for your participation. I've enjoyed it, and please feel free to join us for drinks and snacks afterwards.
It is unfortunate that ECSA declined the invitation to the open discussion, which would have been a perfect opportunity for them to justify their decision and to come together with SAICE and the rest of the VAs to find solutions to resolve the matter. Due to their absence, this still leaves the unresolved matter one-sided. But then again, can their absence imply on a possibly confirmed wrongdoing on their side? I'm Buhle Hlachwayo. Thank you so much for joining us, and until the next event.